So this video is following on from a previous video that we put out with the incredible judge Isobel Wessels, where we looked at test riding, giving you loads of tips about how to improve. But in this one, we are looking at some more advanced things. So tips and tricks that you can use in maybe the higher up levels in dressage. So I really hope you guys enjoy this one. It's going to be super useful. So yeah, let's do it.
So when the horse is coming in canter, this is obviously a higher level test. So the balance, the collection, the straightness, all these things are now even more important. So our horse is coming in nice and straight, and it was fairly direct. The halt itself is not so straight, and the move off not quite crisp and clear enough. But there was no resistance, so it can improve, but it wasn't bad. So satisfactory to fairly good. And the rider can choose which particular leg to come in on. They have to choose the leg in which the horse is naturally straighter and more rideable for the downward transition. So we want to again see just two legs and the horse staying nice on the bit and collected, and the transition straight, deviated a little bit there and is resting a hind leg. So that from the long side would have been a little bit of a lower mark. So the canter nicely in 3-beat. The quality of the canter is also taken into account. The horse should be straight, jumping, the transition straight, and the horse standing immobile, which here we have that very nice ridden transition. And because he's straight, the horse can go forward straight into the trot. So this is clearly a much higher mark. So immediately the canter looks a little bit sharper, a little bit easier to adjust for the canter to halt transition. Contact could be a little more steady. And there, a loss of balance, and the horse not quite balanced in the halt itself, and even from here I can see he's not straight. So this wouldn't be quite such a good mark. And this is a movement that it's worthwhile for the riders to really practice and improve it, because there's no test around that doesn't have at least one centre line and halt, but mostly it's two. So the canter in a clear 3-beat, a nice jump and balance. Again, the contact could be steadier. And this happens quite often, that we have a flying change instead of a downward transition. So it's a nice clear rhythm coming in. Contact could be a little bit steadier. The horse could be more closed in the halt, but he's standing still on the bit. And there he's cantered out. This is a problem that happens quite often, especially when the horse is a bit nervous or the rider is nervous. And of course it loses a lot of marks. So if your horse is prone to doing this, you need to ride a little bit more carefully the transition from halt into trot. Make sure it's not resembling a canter aid. Just see if you can keep him a bit steadier on the bit. So it's a positive entry, the picture looks pretty good. And here I felt the rider took a risk. She really asked for a direct transition, and I have to reward that. The only thing, the halt itself could have been a little bit more under behind, but she really asked canter, halt, and out into trot. So when a rider takes a risk and it pays off, the judge is more positive. This last effort was really positive because you really went for that direct transition, which is what we want to see. So I would suggest now, just to help him and help you, we canter in now on the left rein because that's clearly his best, and you come down the centre line and you make the preparation for a halt, but you don't do it. So you teach him to stay more bouncy and closed and waiting, and he doesn't go down away from you. So just over L, collect him a little bit and then let him forward. The same over X, and then perhaps again at I. So he learns to close up and collect and take weight behind and wait for you to say halt. And that way, after a while, he'll be a little bit more on your aids for that nice direct transition that's a little bit more closed behind, because that's the only thing when he's on the long side one sees he's a little bit out behind. Yeah. Okay? So we just try that because it's helpful for everyone. And obviously you can do it in trot or in canter, but for him, I think in the canter would be the best. So a nice quiet lower leg, upper body tall, so the judge sees you in a good straight position as well as the horse, in the middle of the horse. And now collect a little bit and let him forward. Doesn't matter. You see, that is showing exactly what the problem is. So just turn left now, don't go all the way to the end, and we just do it again. So repetition is the nicest way to correct. So you don't let your half halt wait too long. You have to soften the half halt a little bit. And don't chase him forward out of the half halt, just allow him. So approaching there now, a little bit of a half halt, let him forward, and then over X, little half halt, and then let him forward, and again. Well done. So the other transitions that we have a lot of are when you go from extension to collection, and then that's very often on a diagonal. So where should the transitions be? So if we ask Olivia now to change the rein in extended canter and then collected canter flying change, and I think it would be interesting to show how the transition to collection has to be clear, but it must be on the diagonal line with the horse's nose facing the corner marker. The horse mustn't be parallel to the long side when the transition is done. So she's clearly on the diagonal now. When she collects, she's facing K, and then she makes her collection and flying change. I would have said you were slightly turning. Do another one now and try to make the collection and the flying change at the end of the diagonal line. So it's collection and change. Well done. Now, Olivia, let's show it so people know how you shouldn't do it. And it will be easier to show it from this end up here. So if you wouldn't mind, go back onto the left rein. And we're going to change the rein again in medium canter, and this is what as judges we see a lot. Don't go to H, go quite a bit before H and make your collection and flying change on the long side. Thank you. And that is incorrect. And we see it a lot. It's very well described in the FEI rulebook how that should be ridden, and that was the way not to ride it. And the way that Olivia did it the previous times obviously was in a much better way. And some riders don't ride the downward transition, they just take a change at the end of the diagonal. That's also not good enough. We want to see the horse accepting to collect and make the change. Now we're going to look a little bit at the precise riding of some movements. And the simple change, we have that a lot in the pony tests, even in the junior test there's a simple change on the centre line, and it's a movement we have in elementary level. So I think that would be something interesting to look at, and how the rider should perform this in the best way to get the best marks. So if we ask you, Olivia, to make 2 half 10-metre circles, and your simple change is going to be directly through walk on the center line. So if the simple change is going to be, for instance, at L between V and P, then it's when your body goes through L, you have to walk a little bit either side of that point. So a very nice downward transition and an upward transition, very clear and straight. So this was very nicely done. Shall we try one now the other way round from V again? So the transitions back to walk and then forward into canter should be executed on the center line and straight, not turning onto the second half circle. So this again was very nicely done, and the walk steps were completely regular and 4-beat, and the horse was very obedient and well balanced. So if the rider is able to, the transition needs to be done on the straight. Oh, and here's a wrong strike off. The rider must correct the mistake, which she did. She did very well.
So I'm going to ask Isobel a few questions I'm always wondering when I'm going around in a test, just those things that you wish you could ask the judge. So here is our opportunity. So first of all, what are we meant to be doing when we're going around the outside of the arena before the test?
Well, I think it's always best to keep it simple. If you're coming in to do a medium level test and you're practicing your piaffe as you go around the edge, it doesn't look very good normally, and maybe it doesn't work either.
Yeah.
So just a nice picture so that the judge, if they glance up, they see a good picture and a nice harmony. That's important. I always tell people to do a few little quick transitions, walk, trot, just to get the horse on the aids. But remember that from the time you ring the bell, 45 seconds is quite a long time. So I think
that's like once around. It's once around the arena,
more or less once around. And the only problem can be if you're right down at the bottom and you're in collected canter right and you want to enter on the left rein and the judge rings the bell, it means you've got to gallop all the way around to get on the other rein. That can be a bit difficult. But as long as you're more or less sort of at the top end, you've got time to change to the rein that you want to be on, or stay on the side that you are.
Do you think it's good to go on both reins so the horse can see both, like from both reins?
It would be good, but on the other hand, you probably don't have time. So better to go round, if you're in canter, on the rein that you want to enter on.
Yeah.
So you know, your good side is the left, so I'd go around the edge on the left rein and perhaps just ride a few transitions on and back, just get the horse nice in front of the leg, like you did on the centre line. But I think the main thing is don't show off when you go around the edge, and don't go around as though you're apologising for being there. You have to be assertive, confident, and just create a nice impression.
And something that I always worry about is when I make mistakes, so say like I pick up the wrong canter league or I have a bit of a wobble, I know this is such a psychological thing, but I always panic that the judge is like, oh, right, and then like holds on to that for the rest of the test, and I get a little bit nervous when I've made a mistake. So as a judge, what are you thinking when someone makes a mistake?
I mark the mistake as I see it in that movement, and then it's over and done with. So I'm not going to hang on to it, definitely not. I mean, obviously at a very high level, and the rider makes lots of mistakes, this is not such a friendly picture, and of course the mark won't be huge. But especially at the lower level, a rider can be disturbed, a horse can get a bit tense in one corner. I try to look for the good in everything and be positive. And once the mistake is done, I'm on to the next movement. I put it behind me, and I think the rider should as well. You can't change what went wrong. You have to pick up the correct lead again if you've taken the wrong lead, and then from there just move on and do your best in the next movement. Forget the mistake.
And then say the horse's way of going is getting a little bit worse, and you know when you're training at home you'd maybe do like a transition or a little half halt and almost like ruin a moment to make the rest better. Do you not like seeing that in a test? Would you prefer someone kind of just covers it up all the time, or would you prefer them to kind of just deal with it and then have a better way of
Personally,
going?
I would rather they dealt with it.
Yeah.
Try not to be
That's so
too
interesting.
obvious.
Yeah.
If a correction is very big, obviously we don't want to see that.
Yeah.
But if there's a discreet but clear correction, maybe it's a little bit at the other end in a corner,
Yeah.
not so visible. But everyone knows that a horse has to be trained. You can't just sit there like a rag doll and the
Yeah.
horse will go around and do its own thing, and that doesn't have a future, does it?
Yeah, and it's hard when you're going into a test more of like a training style,
Yes.
and you need to sort of educate them in the arena
Yes.
instead of just leaving
So
them alone.
we don't want to see rough riding.
No.
But certainly, if a rider identifies something's gone wrong here, I'm going to fix it in a nice way, in a positive but harmonious way, then clearly the judge doesn't mind that at all.
Yeah.
We're all ex-trainers, riders, whatever.
Yeah.
So we
I just
want
even
that.
sometimes, yeah, it's like minimal. I get worried about kind of doing something and then them being like,
Yeah.
I don't know, I overthink it sometimes and worry
Yes.
about.
We are human.
Yeah, remember
I know
that.
there's a lot of, there are lots of judges who are considered to be a bit mean or a bit too generous, but I think most judges are judging each movement
Yeah.
as it happens. And if the judge gives a clear and positive and correct comment and mark for each movement, they've done a good job. So if
Yeah.
you ride according to that, you wouldn't worry if you'd made a mistake, because you'd know that the next movement the judge is hopefully more positive again.
Yeah, and if you go wrong, so like course of error, you completely forget your test. What do you do? The bell just rings and then
Yes, and if the judge rings the bell, I mean it's clear, tells you where to go, you come again and you do the movement again. So you would get an error, of course, whichever that happens to be, according to the rules.
Yeah.
Obviously national rules are different to FEI rules. And once you've then gone on again, everything just carries on as normal. But what you can't do is have a second go at something.
Oh, okay.
So if you approached a pirouette on the centre line and it was all going horribly wrong and you thought, oh no, this isn't going to be very good, so I'm going to circle away and I'm going to have another go.
Yeah.
In this instance, the judge judges the first attempt and you get error, of course. So this is a very
Okay.
low mark.
So definitely don't do
So
that.
this is against the rules, and it is all very clearly written down in
Yeah.
national rules as well as FEI rules.
So there you have it, guys. I really hope that you found all those tips and tricks useful, and also the fact that I put in it going wrong as well, because I think it's so important to see it from both perspectives. If there's anything that you'd like us to go into, whether that's with Isobel or just with me, around your test riding or your riding, and just to really dissect it and to give you guys more knowledge, just let us know and we can sort that out for you. But make sure to like and subscribe to the FEI channel, because we'll be bringing you many more soon.